Again, good morning. Welcome to our future conversations. Thank you for being here. We are recording and we are live streaming on our YouTube channel, so you can attend both the channels. And my name is Mara Di Berardo. I'm the co-chair of the Italian node of the Millennium project, and I will be chairing this event today. We will be talking about the Millennium Project global challenges and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, improving education, science, and technology for a better future. I'm really glad about this topic because I think it is very important in order to understand where we at and where we go, and in order to improve our future's awareness. So we will be talking about that with Héctor Casanueva and Elizabeth Florescu. Héctor Casanueva is chair of the Millennium Project Chile, professor of the Master in Strategic Cooperation between the European Union and Latin America, researcher in History and Foresight at the University Institute for Research in Latin American Studies of the University of Alcalá, Spain. He also professor at the University of Political Studies and Administration of Romania and at the Miguel de Cervantes University of Chile and many other things. So thank you, Héctor, for being here. And we also have Elizabeth Florescu, Director of Research of the Millennium Project, working with the project since 1997. She is co-author of the Annual State of the Future and of several other reports and articles in the domain of foresight and security, and work related to the Millennium Project Global Futures Intelligence System, State of the Future Index, and so on. So while she was a policy analyst at the European Commission, she has also developed the Megatrends Hub. So thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. Our future conversations are organized within the UNESCO High-Level Future Literacy Summit. They start on a specific theme, like today's one, and we like you to enjoy, and be included in our conversation and bring your ideas. So, time to start. And in order to address the topic, we could start by asking our speakers, what are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and what are the global challenges facing humanity? Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Yeah, both are frameworks to help think about the future. There is a lot of talk lately about including futures in strategy, strategic planning, future thinking, and at all levels, from security to economy to social science, everywhere. And that's one of the roles of the summit, improving futures literacy. We teach people history, but we don't prepare them to think about the future. And more complex is the future, and more and faster the changes, more difficult it is to get it all together. So for having futures literacy, we really need some frameworks to see the whole complexity, to systemically and systematically see. So systematically in order to see the whole system, and how one trend and change in one area influences changes in the other areas, and systematically, so we follow the change in order to assess trends and new events and how these events influence the whole system and specific trends if we are looking at specific trends specifically. So the global challenges and the Millennium Development Goals are just some of the many frameworks that are mushrooming now. There are many frameworks. The European Commission, you just mentioned, developed the Megatrends Hub, which also follows trends, long-term trends, and which are the events and how do they change. The US is famous for having future studies and all kinds of frameworks for a long time. The emerging science and technology trends, for example, for the Army is one of them. But you have the global trends for NIC, and many. Australia has systems that follow climate change, agriculture, the workforce, and then how they all integrate. Finland has its committee for the future that has its own frameworks. The UK Global Strategic Trends Program is also one of the famous ones. Now, all these practically follow each other. So there is no such thing that you only develop your own. You look at all of them and learn from each other. And all together create a system that helps us thinking about the future, helps policymaking focus attention, funding, and so on. So the Millennium Project Global Challenges and the Sustainable Development are just two of the many systems that develop. But they are important, and we will see later on why.
Héctor, would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, happy to be here in this conversation about the future, about the Millennium Project, the challenges and the SDG of the United Nations. I would like to say 2 or 3 things about the SDGs. One is one of the most successful agreement that the international community have done in the history, because covered it multidimensionally all the aspects, all the issues, all the situation of the sustainable development. And I think you can see them there. It's 17 development goals and 169 targets we have to fill for 2030. Second, I would like to highlight that the main target of the Sustainable Development Goals is to ending with the poverty. This is the main target. The whole goals, the 17 goals, the 169 targets are focused to end the poverty at 2030 year. And this is a very urgent call for action by the all countries, developed and developing countries. And it's a global, the idea is to have a global partnership to avoid the poverty. And we are talking about the multidimensional poverty, not only the poverty by income. The multidimensional poverty means also education, means health, inequality, climate change, environment, and a lot of more things. And at the global level, before the Sustainable Development Goals and the agreement of the Agenda 2030 was agreed, more than 1,600 million people were living in poverty. Now, before the pandemic, about 8 million people in the world are still living in extreme poverty before the pandemic. But I would like to say that according with the figures of the World Bank, with the pandemic, this year, the poverty is increasing in about 110 million more people. So it's important to consider that the objective, the main objective of the Sustainable Development Goals is now we have to revise this objective because of the increasing of the poverty in the world because of the pandemic. And finally, in this intervention, it's important to consider that the index of poverty is based by income in $1.90 a year per person. But this is not enough because the poverty is multidimensional. And according to the United Nations, the multidimensional poverty include education, health, jobs, social security, housing, and social cohesion. So if we take into account the multidimensional poverty, we are talking about 3,000 million people in poverty in the world.
That's huge. That's huge. But we talked about having many systems trying to give us a sense of the future. Let's talk about these two ones. How do they differ, the Sustainable Development Goals and the global challenges, so that we can understand better how to move, among these?
Even their scope and spectrum is different. So there are several systems. These two, we chose these two to show because they really show different approaches. The Sustainable Development Goals that we see here, they were created and they are a political agenda. They put forward the political agenda and to focus policy and funding. There are 162 countries and territories that signed up for the Agenda 2030. And there are about over 230 something indicators that are followed for assessing progress, including those on poverty, for example. But then you have these wildcards, as the pandemic was, and that set back everything. So we absolutely all the SDGs are set back. Not even before, there was no country that would have met all the targets. It's no such thing. But at least they were advancing. And all the indicators, over 230 indicators showed progress. Now it's a setback on almost all the indicators. And that shows why we need a work and a coordination between the different frameworks. Because following the SDGs helps improve and change trajectories on the others, as the global challenges, for example. But following the challenges helps address and change action and policy for SDGs. Now we see the system of the SDGs. These are the 15 global, for those who don't know, and from the viewers who don't know, are the 15 global challenges of the Millennium Project. You have there up the link. There is a direct coordination between the two, and we do follow, for updating the global challenges, we do follow all the indicators and read the reports on assessing progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. No one is expected to literally make sense of this complicated graph that shows the coordination between the 15 global challenges and the Sustainable Development Goals. But it does help us, for example, to know for which challenge, which are the Sustainable Development Goals that we have to follow. And for those who work on different sustainable development goals, it could help them look at which are the challenges that change, how do those challenges change, and how would they impact the trajectory of the respective SDG in order to change eventually policy. How does that impact the targets, the 169 targets that Héctor just mentioned? How the change in the global challenges impact those targets, and this way it helps policy making to address the SDGs. So it is between these frameworks exists a direct link. We made it a little bit simpler too, so for us to follow, that is in a form of a table. But that's for our internal use, and whoever else wants to use it. Because, as I said, for updating the global challenges, we do follow the SDGs. And not once, those who work on the SDGs are consulting how do the global challenges change. Now, this is one of the differences. The fact that one is for political and policy making focus, while the other one is to create a global thinking of the global challenges, to create a global thinking about change and how change is impacted by different events. Another difference is the way they were created. The SDGs were policy driven. They were negotiated by policymakers. But a lot of good thinking is lost because either policymaking or foresight is just the club of a few. And a lot of good thinking is both from civil society and from experts. So another big difference is that the global challenges emerged from consulting experts in foresight, experts in different domains. And in 1996, it was launched. What are the issues before the millennium that humanity is facing? And we had some developments which were distilled into 15 issues with 131 actions. But then people said, well, wait a minute, there aren't only issues, there are also opportunities. And the next day, it was another consultant, another Delphi conducted with the results. Well, fine, now we have issues and opportunities. Now what do we do with them? Well, you have to systemically and systematically, again, follow. So they were all distilled into the 15 global challenges. So another big difference is that the 15 global challenges are the distillation of expert opinion and civil society inputs. And then from there on, we continue updating them and to the present. And as I said, in the updating, we use the indicators that are followed for the SDGs. And we also compute the state of the future, but that's for another issue. And it's also another way of framework. It's another framework. The state of the future index by itself creates a framework for thinking about the future.
And we will be talking about that tomorrow in another talk.
And then you have wildcards as the pandemia that changes the trajectories, and you have to address them. And Héctor will explain this how.
Yes, I would like to say, in addition to the explanation given by Elizabeth, that it is important the long-term focus on the problem of the humanity and the challenge and the problem that the humanity has to avoid and to work on. And that is one of the importance, I think, of the Millennium Project global challenges, because it's a permanent focus on the problem of the humanity, and is a permanent survey to the United Nations, to the multilateral institutions, in order to provide them by studies and proposals and ideas on how to manage the different problems that the humanity is in front. That's, I think, is one additional and important meaning of the Millennium Project Global Challenge. And in fact, as I said previously, before the pandemic, we have one situation, one scenario. Now, with the pandemic, after the pandemic, we don't know after the pandemic exactly what will go on. But right now, we have in four more of this, but in four of these topics on situations, we have obviously a very dangerous situation. In terms of economic growth, we have in the world about 5% of less growth each year. And Latin America is more or less almost at 10%. In international trade, you have almost 10% of the 10% of less trade, international trade, and 23 in Latin America. Latin America is the region with very problem in this growth and enterprises, with the medium and small enterprises and something. The employment, we have almost 300 million less workers or workers that lost their employment. And in terms of poverty, more than 115 people more in addition to the poverty in terms of the World Bank. We are talking about the extreme poverty, people who lives with the $1.90 a day. But the multidimensional, as I said before, is about 3,000 million people. So we have to deal with the impact of the pandemic, and we have to see what to do in the near future in terms of public policies, and globally and locally.
Totally agree, totally agree. This is absolutely in urgence to be addressed. But so, because we are future studies amateur or experts, the questions comes by itself. What's next? I mean, we're talking about goals at 2030, and we're talking about continuously updated global challenges, but we usually look at longer terms for our, challenges and action and plan and scenarios and so on. So what is next for these two systems, in your opinion?
Héctor, I see that you are ready to.
Okay, you can. I would like to say something about this. What next? Yes, Before the pandemic, the international community had reached in my opinion, four very important global agreements with lined another future, different future before the pandemic. The 2030 agenda first, but also the Addis Ababa Development Financing Agreement, finance the development, the Global Agreement on Migrations. You know that migrations is one of the most important things in this period, and with the pandemic and with the climate change is increasing, and the Paris Agreement on climate change. Four important agreements that shape a different future than the future we have now. So I think all these agreements and all these goals has to be, we have to revise this because the indicators have changed, and so the objectives and the instrument have to change. That's what's next in the near future, and the international community has to work on this. And I think review of the indicators and targets, an adjustment of the 2030 agenda, a new 2030, 2040, 2050 agenda with goals incorporating new sustainable development goals. For example, in the 2030 agenda, a difference that the project goals and challenge. In the 2030 agenda, there is no specific goal in science and technology, for example. In the global challenges of the Millennium Project, we have a specific challenge in science and technology. And now, we can see that science and technology cover all the situation that we can imagine to tackle the challenge and the problem that the humanity has. So next, review the indicators, adjustments for the 2030 agenda, an additional agenda for 2040, 2050, and incorporating new goals. For example, science and technology.
Right. I do expect that the 2021, so next year's annual high-level political forum on sustainable development, because that's the annual forum where there is a review of the SDGs. And I expect that next year's one will be very important because of the setback that happened because of the pandemic. So exactly as Héctor mentioned, the targets have to be reviewed in order to make them realistic, not achievable at least, but realistic. Funding and priorities have to be reviewed, and introducing science and technology is one of them, mostly given the high speed of artificial intelligence, of emerging new technologies that create new inequalities, new discrepancies. At the beginning, Héctor was speaking about poverty in general and inequality in general. Well, that cannot be achieved except if we really address access to science and technology, new science and technology. And so that's what the Sustainable Development Goals for the Millennium Project global challenges. They are long-term, we follow them, we update them continuously. There was even a change in the challenges themselves, because at the beginning we didn't have one specifically on education. We had one on governance and one on foresight, and then there were many people, and since we are at the Futures Literacy Summit, it's important to mention that there were many people who said, well, wait a minute, how does education per se change. We considered education as a cross-cutting issue, that everywhere you have to have education for all the challenges to be addressed. But then under pressure, we changed. And that was very important, actually. It turned out to be very important because it's much more in the changes to education than you can mention at each challenge, just spread under each challenge. And we have now one specifically on education. And Jerry will talk tomorrow about how artificial intelligence and all that change governance and how it should be included in futures literacy. But knowing the SDGs, knowing the global challenges and all these kind of frameworks, it's very, very important, fundamental for addressing futures literacy. Otherwise, you are just talking about policy making and so, but with no proof of fundamental evidence. And Héctor has this very thing, it's in Spanish, so I leave it to you because that's very important for addressing.
Yes, you are talking about digitalization, and that's right. The digital transition we are living now is it's a very dangerous transition if we do not do the right things at the level of multilateral level and local level in terms of public policies, in terms of regulations and something. But in terms of inclusivity, because the main dilemma we have for the future is this, that the slide is showing now. A few years ago, the Time review, the cover of the review said, okay, in 2045, we will be immortal. We will have the death of the death, as Jose shows and explained in his bestseller, The Death of the Death. But at the same time, a part of the humanity, the developed countries are working on this kind of targets, this kind of goals. The main part of the humanity has no chance in this. So cannot enter into this system. And as the slide shows, I don't know what happened with the slides. Right?
Yeah. It should be on.
Sorry?
It should be on the slide.
Sorry, I cannot.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's okay, but the slide is this. We have one part of the humanity in this, with this target and working on this, and the main part of the humanity, as the slide shows, is asking for only to have the opportunity to enter into the system. This is a dilemma we have for the future. Poverty, but in the digital transition, we have to avoid the digital marginalization. So we have to work on this through our public policy. That's one of the points I would like to highlight.
Can I answer to Héctor, because he just introduced a very important subject. So yeah, while I was at the Commission, there is a Directorate General on Science and Technology. And I'm happy Sirka is here because she was part of research that was done with Fraunhofer on the radical breakthroughs, innovations and breakthroughs, both in science and technology and social. And we conducted a very interesting workshop just for our own information and to inform policymakers actually in the Commission on how do the 100 different breakthroughs and innovations address the Sustainable Development Goals, to see how are they important and which are and I did prepare, I will try to, a table that shows, can you see the table? It's in MS Word, okay. That lists the Sustainable Development Goals and the breakthroughs and innovations at the side of each, how the respective identified breakthroughs address the different SDGs. Why is this important? To inform, again, it's for futures literacy, to inform policymakers and those who work in the science and technology development field to see how their work impacts what is considered the most important framework for the future of humanity, agreed upon politically, right? And we can see that some of the SDGs are very well represented, and some are not so well. So it means that we need more work in certain areas. I did try to point out two of them. The way we worked was to look at different science and technology breakthroughs and to put them on a thermometer to see how important are they, positive or negative, for each of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's how we got to that table. And on this slide, you can see how, for example, for addressing inequality, yes, I agree that that's difficult and it's more a social thing. We only have a few, while for health, thanks God, we have many, mostly given the pandemic. We have about 30, I think, or something like that, breakthroughs. Still, apparently not enough to address a pandemic. But the point here is that such frameworks as the SDGs and the global challenges help futures literacy of both policymakers, scientific society, citizens generally, to understand how their work influences the SDGs or the future of humanity, and where more work is needed, more focus is needed. And that's one of the very important aspects concerning the future of these frameworks. Both and all the frameworks generally have to identify more specifically which areas are the weak links and need more work. That's probably one of the most important aspects of the frameworks, and in what aspects they can help. Jose, don't leave before putting your question. So we give Jose the floor.
So if you don't mind, I'll make you just one little question that we can take after all, and then I leave the floor to the participants in order to be involved in the conversation. We're talking about what has to be done and other challenges, awaiting our challenges and objectives. But for you, what are your suggestions for education to improve future literacy? Because we're participating at the Future Literacy Summit. So it would be nice to, give your ideas about improving it.
As of me, then more to Héctor, because he's in the academia. I'm not really, but to me, what's important is future should be taught at different levels, but from kindergarten, from very little, because as I said, people are taught and pupils, general school, you are taught history and a lot of other knowledge, but they are not taught what to do with that knowledge, what to expect from the future, how to think about improving their life and the life of everyone. They still don't understand that everybody's well-being depends of each person's well-being, depends of everybody's well-being. You cannot be happy alone. It's no such thing. So in order to improve their own lives, they have to understand the system as a whole at their very level. So each one, little kids and then elementary and so, but in a way or another, futures should be included in general curricula at all levels. And then at civil society level, sure, before elections, there should be some discussions around these kind of frameworks, foresight frameworks, not just what is the platform of each political party. People should see how that platform or the work they are doing is integrated in the whole. It's part of the whole. But I leave it to the academic to think how to improve.
I agree absolutely with you, Elizabeth, because I think if we introduce the foresight vision into the education at the elementary level, not only because people can learn something, but also allow people to take better decisions in their life and with the community, even in the political field, because people with the foresight vision can elect better people to the public institutions, I think. And I would like to add something. I think we have a very, very important force and group of people now working in education, that is the university students in the world. The university student, we have about 220 million university students in the world, and we have about 20,000 universities in the world, according to UNESCO. And also we have about 10 million professors, university professors. This is a very important group of people that we can incorporate, we can integrate to the future literacy work. And talking about the relationship between Europe and Latin America, that is one of my my preferences in academic field. We have about 40 million of university students in the Boston region, and about 2 million professors between Latin America and Europe. We can put them into a framework of in the perspective of future and integrated into the future literacy. I think we have to do something. I hope that UNESCO do something about this and to integrate this important group of people. Thank you.
I think Jose is first. Then we also have a question from the chat. Jerome, you will be speaking for sure. Don't worry. Please, Jose.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for a fantastic session. Mara, you are coordinating many good ideas and sessions from Italy. And we heard Elizabeth from Romania and from Hungary, and Héctor from Chile and Spain. And I see friends from the Millennium Project from Finland, from Mexico, from the USA, from different parts of the world. So this is a very good session. And I do have a question, and actually it's based on Amos Taylor's question. So Amos, you also have to ask your question later. But the development goals are for the year 2030. According to many singularitarians like myself, two things will happen by 2029, 2030, which are mind-blowing, totally changing the future. One is passing the Alan Turing test. In fact, we estimate that will happen before, but just to be safe, 2029, 2030, we will pass the Alan Turing test and we will have machine intelligence comparable to human intelligence. That is one thing we see coming. The second one, we believe that we will reach longevity escape velocity, sometimes called as the Methuselarity, which means that we will live long enough, if we make it to 2030, to live long enough to live forever, because we will be gaining 1 year per every year we survive. So the development goals that end in 2030 actually coincide with the beginning of a new world of artificial intelligence that will help human intelligence. And so I think actually we should be able to reach both the Millennium global challenges and the development goals of the United Nations faster, sooner, better for everybody. And Héctor talked about the singularity. So yes, I believe in that. But again, the year 2045 is late. It's a late time. Elizabeth, I hope it will happen earlier, in fact. And not only I hope, I think it will happen earlier. And it will help us to overcome the human limitations and become better humans, longer life, better lives, more intelligent life, better well-being. So anyway, I just want to put those 2 points with artificial intelligence and basically indefinite lifespans by the year 2030. This is a new world opening up in 2030. So Elizabeth, some comments, and Héctor, some comments. I would love to hear your comments.
I would love to share your enthusiasm, and I do hope that you are right. And I am looking forward to the annual high-level political forum on sustainable development of 2031, when we will say, hey, all the goals were achieved, we move on, and I don't know what will come after, and how in the conditions of artificial intelligence, maybe Jerry can throw in 2 cents about what framework would we expect after 2030? Jerry, I throw you the towel.
Well, wait a minute. I was online. I didn't want to jump ahead of the line.
Well, the question was, what do we expect after 2030? Because by 2030 we arrive to singularity. All the goals were achieved thanks to all the science and technology achievements that Jose mentioned. So what do you think? What kind of frame will we have after 2030?
If Mara will let me, to answer that, I'm jumping ahead of the line. Amos, so you got your question still there? Is there, so I can go ahead? Okay. I want to, there's so many things to respond to. Let me respond to the first part, which was about the singularity, education, future literacy, all of that sort of stuff. All right. There's an important question of ethics in teaching about the future that is often forgotten. For the academics in the group, they can look at Futures Journal 25 years ago. I wrote about this in detail. If a teacher or a curriculum focuses mostly on the problems, how we won't have a good future, then you're telling the unconscious mind of children there may not be a future. Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we thought thermonuclear war was going to happen between Moscow and Washington. So the unconscious mind says, why should I take the future seriously? If you tell people everything's going to be great and wonderful, it's like the blissed out sadhu who walks through the jungle and he's enlightened and he's friendly and wonder, and he steps on a cobra, boom, and he's dead. Right? The two extremes are immoral, in my judgment. It is immoral to hypnotize people that things are going to be bad, and it's immoral to hypnotize people that things are going to be good. What I think we have to do when we teach about the future, we have to make sure we have a range of possibilities. If this, then this. Well, what about that? So that we open up the possibilities. And when people, because I run into people who are pessimistic that synthetic biology will finish us off, artificial intelligence will finish us off, climate change will finish us, etc. I want people to remember when they get that pessimism is a cowardly position. It means you don't have to do anything. You just have to say, it's not possible. That's putting poison in the next generation's unconscious mind. That's immoral. So in teaching about the future, we've got to be sensitive to the unconscious mind of children growing up, because they'll take these things, if you just could do one direction, is that's it, because where else are they getting other information? We have to be very sensitive to that issue. So that's one. The second one, back over to 2030, singularity, all this sort of stuff's going to happen, which of course we explained a bit in 2050 scenarios this year that came out. One of the things that is often forgotten, one of the biggest holes in the future's business worldwide, in my judgment, the biggest gap is organized crime. We talk about ethics, like I just did. We talk about environment, we talk about technology, we talk about governance, we talk about education, we talk about gender issues, but not organized crime. This is a basic mistake, because organized crime has the money to buy the tools that Jose was talking about. We all know that a hammer can build a house and a hammer can kill you. We know this, right? So how we use these things, how we think about these is extremely important. And futurists have got to start taking organized crime seriously. It makes twice as much money per year as all of the military budgets combined worldwide. It is gigantic. It is irresponsible to ignore organized crime on a global basis, especially when you're talking about future tools of artificial intelligence, because they can buy the best software people on the planet. And even if they can't get the ones they want, they can create a whole series of shell corporations. So you think you're working for the good guys, but you're not. So those are two little comments.
Amos, I know you wrote something on the chat. Maybe you want to jump in, say something?
Yes, I guess you, in a way, answered it, and maybe it might not. Of course, it's not answerable yet, but I'm just curious, you know, because we have these SDG goals, but they have a kind of a sell-by date. Also, with things like the Paris Agreement, they have a sell-by date, and something then presumably comes afterwards, which we dare not ask what it is yet. And as futurists, we have to do that. But I'm also aware of this, the fact that when you're collecting indicators, you know, which Elizabeth, your study was really identifying all the indicators. So but you're also kind of that tells the story, that focuses, bounds the issue. But there are other things. Right now we're focused on certain emissions, CO2 emissions, but there are other gases that are harmful for the planet that we don't track and monitor. So, for an example, my question came out from that.
Right, and you are right. None of these frameworks is really closed, or I don't know. They are all reassessed continuously because new challenges appear. We have to look if it's really a new challenge or it's only a trend in another challenge. So that's very important to identify if it's really something completely new. And that's also for the SDGs. That's why there are those annual high-level political meetings, because they are reassessed, both the targets, the indicators, and the funding and the priorities. As I said, I expect that next year's high-level meeting will come up with new priorities. I would be very surprised if not, because of the pandemic. So you have all these wildcards or new technological developments or whatever you, and then yes, you have to reassess. So all these frameworks are continuously assessed. Not only annually, I continuously reassessed. And the indicators are improved. Some are added, some are indexes also, because you have the indexes that show you how the correlation between the different indicators, because you can do very well on all the indicators, but if the index for the future looks bad, then you are bad, in a bad situation, right? But all the indicators that compose the indexes are always reassessed. And more than that, even the historical data, because guess what? Historical data changes. Either because they were badly collected, or because governments or institutions or so lie, or you know, and then you have to reassess historically back all the index and see where exactly you are. Yeah.
Sirka, would you like to say something?
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for these presentations and discussion. I'd like to point out or continue what Elizabeth said, that they will be reassessed, and I'd like to point out continuously reassessed, because actually all the concepts that are embedded in, let's say, in Millennium Project, global challenges, the concepts themselves are evolving all the time, like work, education, technology. So we have to keep up with this kind of evolution of those areas and concepts. So in order to understand where we are now and anticipate where they are going, and then also ask these kind of questions, then what are the implications? So that's also very important.
Is there anyone who wants to jump in? Say his point of view. Héctor, please.
Yes, thank you. I would like to say something about the organized crime that Jerry mentioned. A few days ago, I see a presentation, a very good presentation of Concepción Olavarrieta about the organized crime at the summit of the engineers of Peru. That was a very important event there about the future of Peru, about the future of humanity, the region. And I enjoy very much the presentation, but I worry a lot about what the presentation shows. I think, I don't know if Concepción share this presentation with all of you, but I would like to have the presentation.
Concepción is here, but I'm not sure because she was coming in and out, so I'm not sure she can hear us. Concepción, if you hear us, you can jump in and say something with us. And we also have other people around, Marco, Simone, Michaela. Would you like, Vicky, would you like to jump in the discussion and say what you think? Or maybe not. Anyway.
Challenge Simone, because he's with the indexes and indicators. Simone, how do indicators and indexes help us identify events or triggers for a really, really substantial change. What's the importance? You work on indicators and indexes all the time.
Which kind of indicators do you mean?
Any. So indicators as a framework, indexes as a framework, and how do they help us in futures literacy by identifying which is that thing that triggered a systemic change? Because there are sometimes things that you don't know without having a framework and composite to see how it helped the change in the whole system.
In my opinion, it's a very, very big question, but from a statistical point of view, I can answer from this point of view. Any kind of indicator in the quantitative sense, in my opinion, is only able to give us some information in the short term. So in the long term, I think that we don't have indicators. Let's think about the statistics on the COVID-19. Every day we have numbers on the people infected by the virus, but it is quite impossible to predict even only the number of deaths of tomorrow. So if your question is the power of an indicator in predicting something, my answer is a very, very little power. Another question is when a trend changed the direction, but it's also in that case, it's very, very difficult to have early signals for the change on the trend. So in the context of education, I think it's even much more difficult to have indicators. Because maybe the question is how to construct a composite indicator and not only one indicator. This is the big question. Maybe if one is able to construct a very good composite indicator, so your question could be very, very interesting in what can I say, which is the signal of the composite indicator. But anyway, anytime we try to construct a composite indicator, we lose some part of the reality, some part of the real life, like the things that Jerry was talking about before. If we construct a very, very good indicator of the economic system, it could be a very good indicator in telling us what is the GDP next year. But if we don't consider organized crime, that indicator is useless. So the question is how to construct a composite indicator englobing all the global changes, all the variables of our society. Is very, very complex.
Right.
This is just an opinion from a statistical point of view, not a sociological point of view, of course.
But that's why we asked, because you're an
okay.
Thank you.
I'm here. I'm having problems. So I'm having problems because I couldn't connect by Zoom. So I was by YouTube and it was a terrible echo. But now, thank you, Héctor, for mentioning the talk conference and my participation, especially. My proposal was, after reviewing all the general situation and the impact that the transnational organized crime has, is that we have to think always in the 15 global challenges and how it could address to any of them, first. And second, the solution is prevention. But prevention needs to be addressed through an ecosystem, because we cannot only work with one of the 25 variables And at the same time, we have to involve the whole society. When I mean, I was speaking to the public, private, all universities, all the banks, and so on, and start with pilot projects. There's a very, very interesting and general conclusion that I propose that we could do in regard to that, and I think that we can really do something if we work it together, but looking at really as a whole, not as one of as corruption or smuggling people or organs traffic or something like that. We really have to work, and we need leaders in the world to be committed in regard to that. And I think that the next way to address it is that hopefully with the Millennium Project we can work on that ecosystem, really, because that will be a great contribution to help the world in general of all the dangers that we are facing with transnational organized crime.
Any other questions, suggestions, proposal?
Excellent, thank you. I want to thank Concepcion, because that maybe it should be something added to the SDGs. I don't know how, but it might help. When you mentioned that, yes, high-level politicians should be involved in that. Maybe this could help, because right now it is, and we have the office in Vienna, and so to address organized crime, but so at the UN level, but none of the SDGs, not even 16, which is on peace and conflict, really addresses organized crime. And as you mentioned, it's a cross-cutting thing. Maybe it would be good that they pick it up from the Millennium Project or others who work and have it as with a target. I don't know any of the targets actually being addressing organized crime. Specifically, I have to go back and see. I'm not sure, but I don't recall any of them really being on organized crime.
It is. We have to check that together, Elisabeth, because maybe there could be some actions or things that are proposed to be faced, but at the same time, it is not addressed as a whole. Mm-hmm. I will send you, and I will share it, even it's in Spanish. I'll try to translate my presentation in English and share it with all of you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we will include someone else working on the field in order to assess it better if you want. So we're getting close to the end. Some last comment, Héctor, for instance.
My last comment is to say thank you very much you for your magnificent and wonderful work to organize this conversation and the previous conversation and the conversation we will have the next 2 days. Thank you very much. Nothing more to add. I agree with that. Elisabeth, of course, and everybody have said about this, and we have work to do, I think, because we have to review the challenge. We have to review the 17 goals of the United Nations and to make some proposals in the near future about this. Thank you again.
Elisabeth, closing comment.
Again, thank you everyone, and looking forward to working on all the frameworks possible to improve thinking about the future, for building the best possible future for humanity as a whole. Thank you.
Very nice.
Congratulations to both of you.
Sorry?
Congratulations to all of you.
Congratulations, yeah. I'm starting to lose points, you know. After having spent the whole day online, talking to people through a screen. Marco, would you like to say something before closing?
No, thank you. No, it's okay. Thank you very, very much, Concepcion.
These are open conversations, so, you know, everybody can bring their ideas. So, Amos, any last thought?
Thank you very much. Really interesting, and interesting to see this in the context of futures literacy, because especially in this context, because there is, you know, there's a lot of business as usual suddenly coming underneath the name of futures literacy, and so here I think the way I see this aspect of emergence, I think that the monitoring that you've been doing, it really kind of speaks to those spillovers, for example, and these kind of gray areas and these overlapping areas, and where one side can, so that we don't have to kind of understand the whole mathematical equation, but we understand that there is a dialogue between these, and that's the right dialogue to be having. So really, really interesting stuff, fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sirka, something to add before closing?
Thank you very much, all of you. And then I'd like to end up saying, like, this global challenges framework is really useful and practical, and especially when we look at the interconnections between different challenges, it gives new dimension. Not just looking at one, but when we see the whole system of 15 challenges and then these connections, interconnections, it's important. Thank you very much.
Well, I must also say that so one is scary. Sometimes it's scaring because you see so many connections. So you know that you got to impact on everything that is connected to every other thing. So you have to think carefully to what you're doing. But that's how this is useful, in order to understand, you know, what your decision and action is bringing you and all the other people to work to. Please, Héctor, go.
Sorry, Mara, I forgot to mention the document that with Elizabeth, I and Jerry made about the relationship between the 15 challenge and the 17 development goals. And the document is available at the website of the Millennium Project.
Absolutely. So, any last comment? Like Simone, maybe you want to say something? We have involved you all in the conversation, so it's you are speaker.
Elizabeth, one idea could be make a cross-impact analysis on the development goals.
Right.
Because interconnection means probabilities, dependencies among them.
That's excellent. That's excellent to make a cross-impact analysis with the targets, with the 109 targets, and see which one improves which. Right. Yeah. Or some are actually acting negatively. So you improve one of the challenges of the SDGs, but it might have a negative impact. For example, urbanization or developing industrialization and infrastructure might have a bad impact on some others, as reducing CO2 or on energy or so. Right. Yeah. Right. Yes, a cross-impact analysis would be excellent. I don't know if anyone has done it. If not, we should eventually think about it.
Yes, I don't know that.
Exactly. We should find out if somebody did it or not already, and if not, right, we can do that.
Good.
Excellent.
Let's find some sponsors to do the research. So, guys, I think it's time to close. Well, I will add a very short comment on what we said, very intriguing. Thank you all. Thank you, Héctor. Thank you, Elizabeth, because we need to talk about this stuff. We need to discuss about them. We need to not to take them like they are unchangeable, but they change every day, every time. So we need to keep, you know, talking and focusing the attention on these dams, in my opinion. That's why I'm so happy we had this session in order to bring this topic in the UNESCO Future Literacy Summit. And we all know that navigating in this complexity is difficult, and but we need to do that to improve our condition for the future, because the way we act within the challenges and goals that we're trying to reach will define our future and the future of our future generations, which is even more important than our future. So just a little comment about that. I remember during the World Future Day that the Millennium Project organized during March the 1st of this year. There were many people talking about the solutions that could have been acted to, you know, solve challenges and reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. So the common idea coming out from this discussion was that we have the solutions. We have many solutions. We even have solution addressing more than one challenge at once, or more than one Sustainable Development Goals. And there could be as many solutions coming up in the near future. So what is missing is the will to act and apply them, and the will to collaborate to address them. So my last thing about this topic is about collaboration, global collaboration, to, you know, solve the challenges, address the challenges, not really solve, and meet the target we defined, we co-defined. This is very important. I think that as the participant to the World Future Day I was talking about, collaborating is not teach. They don't teach us to collaborate to each other with different ideas, different groups, and we need to do that in order to address this challenge. So let's pay more attention to that in education. Future literacy is absolutely important, but is even more powerful if it's applied together by defining common visions besides of common scenarios. Common vision that motivates and empower us to go towards our objectives defined by this common vision. So this is my last thought for the day. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. We have 3 fantastic conversations coming up, and one is about the State of the Future Index with Puresh Chandri, Millennium Project Pakistan. The second one in the morning is with Elizabeth, again, that has been working with the Millennium Project since the beginning, so she will help us to grow to the research, all the research and activities of the Millennium Project. And then we're having another session in the afternoon with Jerry Glenn about future thinking as a global future intelligence system. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming up. Thank you to all our Node co-chair showing up, saying their ideas, to all other participants, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Thank